Hi. Yeah. Hi. I thought it would be really fun to do some ReactJS stuff because yesterday a few people asked about it, and I was trying to do React stuff for a long time and got frustrated, and it just ended up being a giant talk thing. So I thought today I could be a little bit more focused. I could show you what I managed to get done after last night's stream, because I actually got quite a cool thing done, and I'll show you. But I want to put some music on. So let me put this like a little bit softer and make it maybe a little bit softer. Let's see. What is this? Next song. Okay. So, anyone here yet? No. Okay, I'll just get going then, shall I? The thing that I was trying to do yesterday was to get a React component running in like a live environment. So what I already had a way to be able to build this code out, right? So using Browserify, I have this npm build script which will load in like a root source file which imports all sorts of other like subclasses or whatever, and then run it through Babel and output it to like a minified distributable thing, right? I also added source maps to this after that because I thought it would be kind of useful to have that, to have the ability to do source maps, and Uglify already has it, so I thought that would be cool. And I added exclusions for React and React DOM because those generally won't be bundled in. With this source. Like, I presume this could be run as like a standalone thing, right? Like it could be included in another application which already has React and React DOM, and we wouldn't want to bundle that stuff a second time because it's kind of heavy. So if we exclude it, then there'll be a helpful error message to say React can't be found, and then maybe we can just document that or whatever. But I have this build thing, right? I have this build process. So normal workflow is I'll write some ES6 JSX code and then do npm run build, and it'll build this minified file, and it looks like this. Well, this isn't minified, but this is the ES5 compatible version of it. So there's like some classes here and a subclass here. But I wanted to also have examples in the repository. So example HTML pages that load in a set of presentation slides. And I want to be able to debug off of that as I'm building it. And I don't want to have to run the watcher or the builder all the time. I want to just be able to click straight through to where this ES6 stuff is defined and debug it from there. So I went on like a big mission yesterday to figure out how to get this live debugging environment, and I tried using ES6 module loader, which, let me show you which one I try to use so you know which one not to use. ES6 module loader. Ooh, that totally messed up that window. Let me just see if the chat window is still working. Okay, chat window is still good. Okay, the ES6 module loader that I tried, wow, I can't English, was this. So the example code that they list here is that you include this, and you include available transpiler, and then you like import stuff like this, and that should allow you to run ES6 code directly in the browser. But what I found was that the code that it runs directly doesn't like import statements, that this module loader doesn't have the underlying code to support require statements, and the way that Babel transpiles creates require statements. So long story short, I ended up going with a different thing, which is system.js. Is this the repo? Which looks very similar in code. It actually, like, the implementation was quite easy to do with this. Once I figured out that this was the right thing to use, you do like a similar kind of configuration, a similar kind of importing, and it supports Babel and transpiles everything. So the resulting code looks like this. Close that panel. I load a browser version of Babel transpiler. I load system.js's browser like importer thing, and then I do a little bit of configuration here. So transpiler Babel to compile the ES6 down to ES5, and then this stuff maps to classes that I'm writing and subclasses that I'm writing in ES6 as React components. So we'll look at what that looks like. But this stuff here is the already built React and React DOM stuff, which you can get from ReactJS. You can get from the React doc site. That internet. If you click this download link, you'll get an archive, and in that archive there will be a build folder, and in there will be a file called react.js, react-dom.js, and react-with-addons.js, and the minified versions of those. So if you copy React and React DOM just into like an examples folder like I've done here, then you can reference that stuff in here, and it will be loaded in to account for us excluding that stuff in the build. It'll also use this when the system.js is trying to import from this. If we look at index.js, which we're importing down here, what that says is import these two, and these are looked up directly from that configuration. And then this is also looked up from that configuration, which lets us render components. And we can see this in action just using npm serve command. If I open browser tab, I almost forgot how to internet again. Here we go, examples. And that loads in the stuff here. I actually want to reload so you can see the process of things happening. Because this system.js is saying, okay, I have an import statement here. I have an import statement here, which means, and this configuration option means the file I want to import is actually relative to this index.js. So load that index.js. And then index.js says, okay, I actually want to import React from React and React DOM from React DOM and Reflow from Reflow, which is why this stuff gets loaded. But this reference goes straight to the config value. So I don't need to provide any React source code here. It will build this stuff out based on what's in that archive that you download. And then index.js says load reflow from reflow, which again goes to this configuration option and looks up the source file that I have here. So I have a reflow source file here, and it's just a simple component with a render method. This, again, system.js is going back to that import and seeing it's already imported that JavaScript file, so don't re-import it. But here we're importing a slide, which is this file here. Okay, and this syntax would work if we built a source code, if we built a distribution file out. In fact, you can see it in this distribution file I built earlier. It builds it out because that reference works. But system.js also picks up where that's defined based on this path here. So we can define a bunch of mappings which get calculated when the import statements are being read by system.js and ignored when the import statements are being read by Babel. So we can build, and we can build excluding React and React DOM. We have an npm watcher if we wanted to do that, but using system.js we can also do all of this stuff at runtime, and that's why the stuff gets loaded in with Ajax, which is pretty sweet. So this actually works. I mean, if you look at the source code, the components that I've got here, this render method renders a div with reflow in it, which is what you see up here, and then a slide component, which renders a div with slide in it. Check this syntax out, and you'll have a div within a div. So we have span because that's how React has grouped this stuff together. But we have span wrapped around that text and then a separate div. So it's cool, it works. Like as a platform for debugging live, this stuff's really cool. And I'll put some, I might blog about this process. I had to figure it out too, because I wanted to write about it and just have a nice easy debugging workflow. So, anyone here yet? Probably not. Ah, one person. Hi. Welcome. The thing that I started this code for was to... ReactJS is the organization, I think? Was as an experiment to learn some more ReactJS, and the code that I wanted to experiment with was this this stuff that I've been using for slide deck presentations. It's a very simple system of defining a bunch of pages and allowing keyboard navigation to go between pages. And it started as some CoffeeScript code many years ago, and I've just kept on iterating over it. And the latest version was a port to ES6, but now I want to see how much of it I can squeeze into ReactJS, just to learn React a bit more. And I thought it would also be a good example to learn some basics about ReactJS. So if you come here to try and learn ReactJS, hopefully this is going to provide a good platform for that. And if you missed some instructions that I was talking about earlier about getting a live debug environment, just check the archive video afterwards. Should be fun. I saved the archives. So, where to begin? I've got an implementation of this. Like if you go to github.com/reflowjs, I have an implementation of this. This is a slide deck with some instructions, very basic instructions on how to get it running. And the way that this is defined is I'm loading in some jQuery stuff, which is kind of unimportant for what we're going to be doing. But I create this reflow object, and then I create an array of page objects within that. And each page has some markup that it references. And then this whole thing gets keyboard navigation to be able to do like left and right stuff. So I kind of want to try and do a bit of that, maybe demonstrate some like basic React component stuff and properties and state and that kind of nonsense. So if you're keen, like ask questions about it, it should be fine. Chat. Just ask questions whenever, because I'm watching chat. So, modeling on this. What do we want to do? Okay, well, I think the reflow component is the component that I want to have to contain all of the different slides within it, and it will be the one that manages communicating with the outside world. So loading in slide data, getting keyboard input, changing browser URLs, that kind of thing. And I don't actually know what I want to render from it yet, so I'm just gonna do exactly what was rendering before, but without the slide stuff showing up there. Maybe what I want to do though is have a way to show children in here, because I'm going to probably how this is going to work is that I'm going to try and do something like where's the mix? I'm probably going to try and do something like let's reflow probably something like this, and then like iterate over the children and just render this thing out at the end. Does that